Hello, everyone. I'm recording this while there's a PE session going on in the hall, so if you can hear the faint sound of the screams of children, then that's the most likely source. I thought I'd take a moment to talk to you directly about the school's strategy for coming back to school. We were all kind of hoping that the lockdown would be shorter than it probably will be. And in the event that this kind of rumbles on and on, I can imagine that you might well be feeling more anxious about teaching your children at home and what happens to their kind of development relative to previous year groups. So I wanted to kind of share some of the thinking behind our school strategy at the moment. So we've got, as I told you in the last video, we've got a home team and we've got a school team. And as home team, have a little bit of headspace in terms of thinking about curriculum development. But we all want to consider the likely impact of not quite following the curriculum as we would have in school, and plan accordingly for the return, because that's the most important part of this. Is that as good as your online provision will be, it won't ever touch what school gives people. And I wanted to kind of share a bit of the research that went into our thinking behind what most schools will call their recovery strategy. So first, something like this hasn't happened before, but there have been kind of similar amounts of time out of school. So in my recovery strategy, the first thing I talk about is New Zealand and the Christchurch earthquake in 2011, where children missed 3 months of school, and then as they came back, the schools ever so slightly reorganised their curriculum, and that year group relative to previous year groups did better. The same could be said for Hurricane Katrina as well. Now that was 11 weeks, I think. If I check, I think it is. Yeah, 11 weeks out of school, and again, as people came back and they were tested relative to previous year groups, the children did better. Now, this is not an argument against school. This is not a actually, if you take your kids out of school for 3 months, they're actually going to do better. Firstly, in both of those scenarios, online provision wasn't anything like what we're providing at the moment. So most of those children got nothing in that time, similar to the first lockdown, depending on kind of your engagement with the work, and that was different for everyone. But this is kind of it's substantially more than that lockdown, and certainly Hurricane Katrina and Christchurch. So why, if you take time out of school, might you do better? Well, firstly, time in school does not equal achievement on its own. So if you take Australia, for example, their national curriculum, their time in school, their day is longer than everyone else's, and their year is longer than everyone else's. So I think if you took 10 weeks off the Australian curriculum, you'd arrive at Estonia's time in school, and Estonia flatten Australia in the PISA rankings, which are used to compare countries. So while attendance is really important and time in school is really important, it's not the sole reason for achievement. John Hattie, who he's a New Zealand-based educationalist, but he's very well known in education. His analysis of what happened in New Zealand was that schools focused on the prerequisites and the most important prerequisites going forward. So let's take a section of our curriculum. Let's take a bit of the maths curriculum and focus on Roman numerals. Now, I was looking at this with the teachers earlier in the year because we were talking about recovery strategy, and I could see that we'd timetabled 4 lessons for Roman numerals. It's a child shouting outside my door. And 4 lessons for Roman numerals is quite a lot of lessons for Roman numerals. Now, if you consider how often you use Roman numerals in your life, it would be at the Super Bowl or to work out the date at the end of films, that kind of thing. And so a school might make the decision to teach one lesson of Roman numerals to cover the curriculum objective, and to take back these 3 lessons and have a look at, for example, place value, number, formal methods of addition and subtraction, whatever you want to kind of take that time back for. The curriculum is broad, some would say bloated at primary, and there's quite a lot of scope for trimming certain aspects, still covering them, but taking that time and putting it into the stuff that's really, really going to matter and make a difference. You would naturally assume that schools did this all the time, but the curriculum was reimagined. It's a brand new curriculum in 2014, and that happened without any curriculum training whatsoever, at least for the first couple of years. So schools were still kind of grappling with the curriculum just a few years ago. So in terms of how sleek, how streamlined the curriculum is, the answer is probably not that much. And there are things that we can spend less time on and focus on the more important prerequisites. We can do that across the board. I gave a maths example, but you can easily see how that might apply to English. So that's one part of our curriculum strategy, which is we're going to have a look at the most important salient parts of the curriculum, and we're going to divert our time there. And that's what John Hattie said happened in New Zealand. He said the reason people are doing better is that schools focused on what needs to be taught. And again, you might say, well, that should be a given, shouldn't it? But that schools are not in charge of a national curriculum, but we can play around with the design and implementation of that as well. Another aspect of our curriculum recovery strategy will be reading, which is the heartbeat of learning. It's the most important thing that we can do with our kids is read. In fact, quite often when people ask me how to be a better mathematician, I tell them to read more, because reading gives you stamina, it gives you comprehension. And if you think about most maths tests, like a reasoning test, there's quite a heavy reading load there before you even get to the maths. So we've been considering as a staff how we can make reading the daily act that it needs to be all the way through. So when you get beyond the infants and the mechanics of reading, like phonics and daily readers, you might not see it in schools as much as you enter the junior and secondary stage. But we very firmly believe that reading should be a part of our daily menu. When we looked at the library and the kind of text that we wanted kids to experience as they came through our school, we made a list of, I think it's close to 150 texts, and we had a fraction of those in the library as I joined. So some of our catch-up curriculum funding is going to go to these texts as well. So our library is having a whole overhaul, and the idea is that you're read to daily, you might encounter an extract, and then you can come to the library and you can go and be inspired to go and find that book as well. So that's a big part of our curriculum recovery strategy. We bought into a program called Curriculum Maestro, which hasn't really flown yet because of what's happened this year. But we are organising it based around all of these principles of prerequisites, keeping our curriculum as streamlined as possible to make sure that we focus on the really, really important stuff so children don't lose out relative to previous year groups and they get a really good grounding ahead of obviously leaving us to secondary. We're collectively reading this one. A very posh title, Gallamalfrey to Coherence. And all of our teachers are engaged in reading that at the moment. And that's that core idea behind good curriculum development. And what we're going to do is we're going to explore those ideas. And by the time your children return proper to school, then we should have a really good understanding of exactly where we want to go. Why am I telling you about curriculum development? Because there will probably be a point over the next several weeks where you go, oh my goodness, I'm really worried that they're losing ground, compared to their peers, compared to, how their older sibling had done previously or whatever. And that will be a really common experience, I think, for everyone. Homeschooling is just so difficult. Teachers who I talk to, and I'm a teacher, my wife's a teacher, homeschooling is not the same as teaching kids in school. It's an entirely different dynamic, and we know kids who work extremely hard in school who can be a bit testy at home, and then you've got children who aren't particularly well motivated in school, and we have to put a lot of work into when you're shouldering that entire burden on your own. It is difficult, and it will be a kind of a natural part of the next several weeks to question whether you're doing the right thing for your kid or whether you're able to support them. What I want to say to you is that our recovery strategy is very much based around the idea that we know that it's going to be difficult. We know that not all the work will be completed. And we know that people are working from home or that they're not teachers, and it's really, really tricky. So what we wanted to assure you of is when your children come back into school, and I firmly believe, at least I hope, I have an ardent hope that when they come back to school, that will be a permanent arrangement. When they come back into school, our recovery strategy is there. We know what we're doing, and we are very, very confident that we'll be able to pick up the pieces, however fragmented they may be, as well. Keep it ticking over, of course, but the school is here to pick it up for you when they return. And I wanted to assure you that although it feels counterintuitive, that the real life examples that we have where schools have just focused on those core curriculum elements, children have actually done better than previously. So there is every chance that we can bridge those gaps when your children return to us. Thank you.